Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the VBC Virtual Book Club with me, Amelia Young, and
Diane Noel.
There you go. And here we are. Today we're going to be discussing the book, The Highly Sensitive Person, written by Elaine N Aron, PhD. And we've been given some extra time to read this book, so I hope people had a chance to go through it and think about it, and can therefore add to the conversation at this meeting. So I guess let's go ahead and get started, because I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to speak. So I'm sorry, but I'm going to pick on you to speak. Even if you haven't read it or you didn't like it or whatever, just, say something. All right. And we'll go ahead and begin with, as usual, my delightful co-lead, Diane. Why don't you go ahead and do that? Because I know, since she majored in literature, she is, very, very comprehensive about about having analyzed the book and all that stuff. So I give you the floor, Diane.
Well, great. Thank you. And I'm really excited to hear everyone else's thoughts and our general discussion about this book. But I have to tell you that this was my first read. I had never read this book before. I had heard about her and her work, but I really didn't know a lot about it. And so I discovered a lot about myself and a lot of things that connect in with Healing Touch as well. So when I did the self-test, all of my answers were yes or true. So like not just a few, right, but all of them, which doesn't surprise me. I loved the book. And in the chat, I'm going to put in a second her website. You might have checked it out already, but it's really good. There's a blog, newsletter, links to therapists that are specially trained in this, area, information on coaches, webinars, special webinars for parents of, kids that are highly sensitive people, and courses and workshops that are really looking good too, and also some documentary films, and the links are in there as well, and research articles. So I found this book easy to read in terms of the actual content, but because of the exercises that are suggested, I kind of took a deep dive in some of those and found that I had to take a pause and a lot of time, kind of in between picking it up again. And I really did some deep work, actually really deep. And I was amazed, just totally blown away by this book. I think the author comes through with everything that she promises in the beginning of the book, that we would understand ourselves better and, kind of learn, that some techniques and ways of thriving in a non-sensitive world. So I've already made a lot of adjustments in my life because of this, especially in terms of boundaries, like healthy boundaries, and also just being really more aware of my self-care and the way that I talk to myself, and understanding, and when I see how I am as a sensitive person, I'm not dissing on myself or being negative anymore. I have, compassion, which is a huge, huge difference. So, just honoring my needs, and, thought it was amazing. In terms of healing touch, I'm not surprised that a lot of healers are highly sensitive people. Doesn't surprise me at all. And a couple of kind of tie-ins. I'm always like, as I'm reading, I'm thinking about the tie-ins to our healing work. And on page 212, she talks about creating sacred space, which, you know, we also talk a lot about. I was kind of surprised to see it there. And I thought that was really interesting. You know, sacred space, not only in terms of our work with our clients, but it opened up my mind in terms of creating a sacred space for friends and family and, you know, other people in community as well, which I hadn't really thought about before, but, you know, it's really true for me and I'm sure it is for you too. And the other thing that kind of ties in with Healing Touch, just as a reference, she talks about on page 224, Jung's concept of synchronicity, and how objects influence each other. And, you know, he said even like from a distance type of thing. So it's just kind of further evidence to support our research base in terms of, you know, remote distance healing. So I thoroughly enjoyed the book, just amazing. And I'm sure I'm going to, you know, read more of her other publications and maybe get the workbook. There's a workbook that you can get that kind of does a bit of a deeper dive too. So with that, thank you. And we'll open up the floor for other discussion.
Thank you, Diane. That was great. And would anyone else like to jump in right after Diane? Anybody who has finished reading the book and have something to say about it? Okay, go ahead, Elizabeth.
I sort of like Diane hit all those categories and said, I think I must be the poster child for this and never was aware of it. As far as childhood trauma, and she goes back to that frequently. My dad died when I was 7, and my only sibling was an older brother because my parents were in my 40s when I was born, and he passed away about 2 years after my brother both had glioblastoma, brain cancer, brother and father. And mother did a fine job. You know, I didn't realize that I had any trauma as a child, but I guess maybe I did. And also I was a preemie, and that's not mentioned in the book. And I was just wondering if anybody else had any insight or thoughts on that being a factor and why it may or may not have been mentioned.
That is a good point. Thank you for raising it. And thank you for sharing as well. I know that's a very personal story for you, but I appreciate your courage in sharing your story. I actually worked on a young man who passed away from glioblastoma. I think it was a year ago. So my heart goes to you. Does anybody have anything to say in regards to her question about the preemie factor? Okay, go ahead. Who is that? Pat? Pat, you're still muted. Could you unmute yourself, please?
Hi. My grandson was a preemie, and he is very, very sensitive. He's always been a very anxious child. And I found myself reading this, fascinated by it. I checked 10 out of the number of categories. So I'm probably moderately sensitive, but not highly. But I found myself thinking about my grandson and some of the other people in my family and how they react to stress and stimulation. And I really feel that it's going to help me in my approach to them too. But I agree that I think preemies have a higher sensitivity, at least in my grandson, I see it. So, but it makes sense that they would, because they're not fully developed. and they come into the world and have to, you know, deal with all the sensory stimulation that they're not really developed for. So it makes sense to me. But I too like this book. It was fascinating. Unfortunately I didn't allow myself enough time to finish it, so I'm still working on it. But I will go back. I did the exercises in the beginning, and then I thought I'm not going to finish the book, so I just kept reading. But they're really good exercises, and I think they have great benefit.
Yeah, thank you for that, Pat. Well, it's interesting. In regards to the pre-me question, I will think further on that. I had never thought about it. I would say, just off the top of my head, that we would have to read up on. There are some books that delve into the like, what is it? Things that babies pick up on energetically while in the mother's womb. So that would be something to research. And, things like inherited trauma, like which has been talked about, say, in books like Emotion Code and so forth. So that would be the rabbit holes that I would pursue to try to explore that point. Now, at this stage, usually I wait until most people have shared their thoughts on the book in discussion before I share mine. But I'm going to go ahead and share my idea right now. And first, the thing is that I have a very contrasting opinion on the book in comparison to Diane, which will make it very interesting, I think. And the reason why I'm presenting it right now is just to stimulate more thought and conversation around this subject. So when I selected this book, I actually already had I guess predisposition as to what I thought it was going to explore, because of the word sensitive. Because you see, I was really expecting an exploration of what I have observed personally in myself, as well as people I've worked on, and others. And what I mean about it is the subject of sensitivity to the energy field. Now, this book, on the other hand, turns out to be exploring a personality trait, and it is from the perspective of psychology. And I totally did not clue in on that when I selected the book. And as I did not finish the book, and no excuses there, just that I have been crazy busy. I think some of you can have a grasp of just how busy my schedule has been this past few months. So I did not finish the book, and I tried to actually, but I could have finished the book, but I couldn't because I found it to be very dry. Unlike certain books that we've covered before, such as the one called An Unquiet Mind, and also the other one about the I think the neuroscientist who had a stroke. Anyway, those two books, and probably some others I can't think of right now, they are written with a flair for writing that makes it very engaging. And it takes quite a bit of talent to be able to write on a nonfiction subject matter, and also be a gifted storyteller / writer. Okay, so I found this book a little bit dry, but also because once I realized that the premise was very different from what I had expected it to be, and also the perspective was from quite a different angle than what I had expected. I don't know. I kind of lost interest. I did go over the self-test. Now, the self-test, she did mention in the author's note at the beginning that it is not really that is very subjective, that it's not meant to help you to really determine your high sensitivity or not. That really what would be more uh, defining would be to read, I think, chapter 1 or something, and see if you really relate to it. Now, when I did the self-test, I only got 15 out of those questions. And so that would make me, I guess, moderately sensitive. But a lot of people who know me probably know that, well, I have called myself highly sensitive, but I have been using that word erroneously. Because you see, in my own research, and I used to teach at a school of massage therapy and alternative healing 17 to 15 years ago. So I taught for about 3 years. And in a class that oriented body workers to the whole concept of the energy field. And so it was a required class. So a lot of people who didn't want to be there had to be there. And so starting with that work, I was exposed to a lot of people who are sensitive to the energy field. And so I have, since that time, used the word a sensitive as being someone who is intuitive, I guess. And I think these days people refer to it also as being an empath, I guess, or whatever. But I have just called it being a sensitive, because to me, um, uh, it had less connotation, that you're just sensitive to the energy field. So there's no connotation of being like, the empathy thing is kind of like a sixth sense kind of I guess. And I didn't want to add that to the name, to the word, to the definition. Anyway, so and I would say that the parts where I did not get a yes in her self-test are the parts that asked if I was an introvert, or if I needed time out after being with a bunch of people and things like that. So in those areas, I feel that her definition or her idea of what high sensitivity is um, actually overlaps things like introversion and Asperger's syndrome, things which she herself pointed out that research at her time seemed to mislabel the people whom she calls highly sensitive. You see what I'm saying? So there's definitely food for thought to explore this further. What else can I say? But there are things in the parts which I had read which are of value. So I would actually read this book again and thoroughly when I have the chance, just to see what more there is. Now, I picked this book because this was one that was referred to by other people who wrote books about high sensitivity. But again, I've been, I think I'm like maybe off topic with all these writers. So I need to see if I am or not. So there's like books by Judith Orloff and some other people. I can't remember. And it's all about sensitivity and things like that. So now I need to know, are they talking about the same thing as this lady is talking about, Aron, or or do they touch on the stuff that I'm referring to? You know, so that's a rabbit hole I'm going to have to pursue. And if any of you can enlighten me on these things, please do so. Anyway, and another thing is that now my daughter, my older daughter, who has actually studied level 1 healing touch, she fits that self-test. Okay, she is an introvert. She does get overstimulated and have to withdraw from people. So yeah, and her sensitivity to the energy field is equivalent to mine, if not more. Anyway, now, another thing that I was really interested in was the part which she alluded to in the author's note at the beginning, which is her take on medication for those who are sensitive. And she did, I didn't read it. I mean, I browsed through it, but what I picked up, what I gleaned from those pages is that she did touch upon how these highly sensitive people do have a certain sensitivity to medication, and you know, in particular to antidepressants and you know, those kinds of psychotropic or whatever medication. And I have found that to be true. Like, for example, like in the case of prescription antidepressant, for example, the normal way that psychiatrists would prescribe that is to introduce the medication at, I believe, 25 milligrams, and then increase it over 2-week intervals. And I find that to be too strong, too fast for people who are, you know, sensitive according to my interpretation. and that is a very okay. And she talked about Prozac, and she grouped Prozac with Zoloft and I think, I don't know what the other ones are. And at the time of her publication, which was in 1998, I believe, from what I gathered from her writing, Prozac was, I guess, big in the news. There was a book written about it by somebody which she referred to many times in the book. So perhaps that was why she talked a lot about Prozac, but she lumped Zoloft under the same category as Prozac, which it is technically. But I have found from personal experience and research and, you know, etc., that there is a huge difference between the strength, I guess, of Prozac and that of Zoloft. Like Prozac is a big hammer, Zoloft is a gentler hammer. So, you know, if one was to read her book, in my opinion, and of course she leaves it up to you to decide what is the best thing to do. But by lumping Zoloft with Prozac in the way that she did, I am kind of worried that somebody who would really benefit from Zoloft, even though they're highly sensitive, might disregard it because of its, you know, because of her, you know, putting it too close to Prozac, let's just say. You see what I'm saying? And the thing about medication and sensitivity is important. And I prefer, I guess, I like the way that was approached in the book An Unquiet Mind, which is written by a psychiatrist who suffers from manic depression or bipolar depression. And she stressed the fact that medication can be a great lifesaver when you are faced with either, you know, medicating yourself or, you know, suicide or untreated depression, which can lead to suicide, right? And the thing is that it also in the case in Aron's book here, she equates medication with SSRIs, antidepressants, as as curing a personality trait. And I disagree. I disagree. And that is, I guess, the biggest reason why I am not comfortable with her approach of this sensitivity as a psychological trait. So I am more, I was looking for a book that was exploring sensitivity to the energy field. So there you go. All I have to say about that. I mean, I could say more, but I want to give the floor to the few. So please share your thoughts. Yes, go ahead, Jared.
So I'm Jerry Lawson, and I have a full-time healing and breathwork practice in Oakland, California. So I see a lot of different people for a lot of different things, and I work with cancer and a lot of medical issues. And Aaron's ideas have helped my practice so much. And I like we all have clients that come to us, they don't know about energy. They're young mothers, they're stockbrokers, they're lawyers. I mean, they just don't have the experience we do with all these intuitive practices and perspectives. And so, like, I had this one young mother come, and she thought something was wrong with her whole life. And she was in her 30s, her whole life, like I have to leave family gatherings and cry in the bathroom for 20 minutes. I have to, loud noises really scare me. And so I said, there's a documentary on Amazon that's free. And I said, why don't you just check this out and see what you think? So she did. And she said, oh my God, I finally understand myself. I mean, it presented her with ideas and ways of thinking. She wasn't, there was nothing wrong with her. She understood, and it changed everything for her. And it has for about 5 other clients over like the last 10 years, to see that movie. I don't know how many years, but I say, well, just check out this movie. And then it presents the being sensitive in a way that is kind of cool, because Alanis Morissette's in it, and it makes it okay. And it helps them to understand themselves. And that is so powerful. And I can't tell you how much that movie has changed people's lives. And in fact, she found out later she did not get along with her mother. And then she and her mother watched it together, and she found out her mother was the same way, but her mother was an extrovert and she was an introvert. So she never, and it changed their relationship. It changed her life. And it's done that for about 3 or 4 other clients also. So, and some clients come back and say, well, it doesn't quite, but I see and I understand this or that. And then it gives us a way to talk about, sensitivities, whether it's electromagnetic radiation or it gives you something to latch onto to figure out how they can be more comfortable in the world. Yeah.
What's the name of the movie?
Sensitivity, the Untold Story. Does anybody know the exact? If you put sensitive, it'll come up on Amazon. And her name too.
Yeah, the link is on the website, on her website. Like, all the documentaries are on the right-hand side and you scroll down. So yeah, it's there too. Yeah.
And it's a little art, like I say, I say it's a little arty in the beginning, but just give it 15 minutes, and to more linear thinking clients, and they just, her work has really changed a lot of lives. So that's why I was excited the book was being talked about. It's a great asset for us as healers.
Yes, I agree. I do agree. And actually, the part about crying in the bathroom, I actually marked that, because that is something that I have done when I was younger. And the same thing, my daughter did the same thing. When I discovered that she did that too, it was like, whoa. And so, yeah, that's definitely, I've not heard that from anybody else. So anyway, go ahead, Jerry. What were you
How many
say?
people have seen the movie? Has anyone seen the documentary?
No.
There's this part where this woman is with her husband and her husband is just disgusted with her because they had to leave a party or an event again. And he takes his keys and he shakes them and you can just see her going, and it's like, I know when you shake your keys, I can't help it. She's going, I can't help it. And it's just such a beautiful, clarifying, it really shows how, when you're sensitive, how hard it is to live in the world. And it makes people at least have a sense of how they can help themselves. Like she from that movie and from doing healing touch, and I give her meditations, she really can self-regulate. I mean, now she goes, well, okay, this really upset me. And I did my meditation. She could not self-regulate before. And that movie gave her like hope. So
Yeah, and I think the key thing here is for people who have issues that make them think that there's something wrong with them, to realize that they're not alone and that what they have is not necessarily a problem. It's just that they're different. And that is true for a lot of I guess different types of people. Like, for example, people who are Aspies or Asperger's syndrome. From my work with them, there's nothing wrong with them. They're just different, and so on and so forth. So yeah, and what else am I going to say about that? Anyway, yeah, if it's important, it'll come back. But thank you very much, Jerry, for your insight. And anybody else would like to say anything about this? Go ahead, Debbie.
So I just finished doing level 5 this past November. I don't have a specific practice going on for Healing Touch, but I do volunteer for a few different clinics, and I do friends and family. So the thing that helped me in this book is I thought it gave good insight into the general qualities and perspectives on life as a highly sensitive person. It helped me understand myself, like how, even though I grew up with 6 kids and I thought I was used to having noise and commotion going on, as I got older, I found I do better in quiet and silence. Whereas my husband has to have background noise all the time. And when I went to visit his relatives, they're Italians, they're very loud. And so like, I would get a headache because the volume was just too loud. And I hope they didn't notice, but I'd be sitting, they'd be talking, I have my fingers in my ears because I would get headaches from the volume. And then, but it also helped me understand my relatives, my nephews and my nieces. And what came up recently is my nephew was doing interviews. And one of the comments, he wasn't aware of some of the letters of recommendation that were written for him. And a few of them mentioned being introverted. And he wanted to kind of talk to me about it, to kind of discuss it. And I go, well, I think they're not quite right. They were inaccurate as far as using that term, because I feel it has a negative connotation. So, I was saying he's quiet, but he's a very deep thinker. He processes things. He's very sensitive to other people. He's very polite, and he'll let them talk first before he'll give his opinion. But it's not because he's shy, overly shy, but, he's just very polite. And so I was trying to make him feel a little bit better about that. He has his own style, and so that helped me to help him, as well as another nephew and niece who are also kind of like that too. One of the things that I agree with, I was kind of thinking if they were going to be talking about highly sensitive people, I was kind of hoping they would talk more about sensitivity and energy. So one of the things that we might consider possibly in the future is sensitivity as far as empaths. There's a book by Wendy DeRosa called Becoming an Empowered Empath: How to Clear Energy, Set Boundaries, and embody your intuition. So I think it helps to understand what the personality and qualities are like, because I think a majority of Healing Touch people are going to have those types of qualities and personalities. And I think learning about empaths and how to empower them gives us a more positive, productive way of dealing with it. So I think it's good to understand the issues, the underlying issues behind, so that can help us with people who we come across, as clients, relatives, or friends. And by the way, as far as Prozac, I work with mostly geriatrics for the past 30 years. Prozac is way too strong. Zoloft is what I usually start off with. And even though they might say, oh, you should start off with this dose. So I work with geriatrics. So I don't even start off with that. I start off on half the dose, half of the smallest dose. And rather than increasing it every 2 weeks, I'll give them a good 2 months to see whether it's even working, because sometimes it knocks them out. You do it a little too much, a little too fast, and then they have side effects and they don't want to touch it at all. So I agree with you. And the thing is, what a lot of people in general medicine aren't aware of is when they do these studies on medications, it's usually on middle-aged people, 30s, 40s, maybe 50s, Midwestern, Caucasians. So they're a lot bigger, they're a lot heavier. And in San Francisco area, there are these petite little Asian people. And so these medications are way too much. So I would use a smaller dose. And I like a lot of times when pharmacists would review my meds, they're like, whoa, this doesn't even register as the amount you should be using. But on the same time, they would ask me, did you check a therapeutic dose? I go, no, why? Because it's going to be a whole lot lower than what's considered therapeutic dose. But I had to have it on the chart in case the state reviewed it. But I knew it wasn't even going to register. But, if they respond, if that works, then I'm going to go with the lower dose. I'm not going to go what's written, in the books as far as it, because these patients don't necessarily read the books. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the medications.
Yeah, thank you very much, Debbie. That's great. I appreciate that insight from you. Another thing, another medication that she mentions in the book is the anti-anxiety medications such as Valium, Xanax, and all that stuff. She did not mention lorazepam or Ativan. And the thing is, there is a huge difference between Valium and Ativan. Again, Valium can actually, from what I've experienced and seen, cause you to be agitated and depressed, actually. Whereas lorazepam can be almost like a miracle cure for completely nervous breakdown, and boom, suddenly it's like, woo, you're back to normal. Now, what I'm afraid of is that some people who might really, really, truly benefit from lorazepam might be misled into thinking that it's just as bad as Valium. Okay, and when you need something like that, it is a crisis. It is a crisis.
We're not even allowed to use Valium on our geriatric patients.
Yeah. So I don't know why Valium is even still available. Anyway, but the thing is, there's another thing. I was going to say something. What was it? Anyway, it'll come back to me. So I'll give the floor to someone else while I hopefully remember what I was going to say.
Just a quick note that Wendy DeRosa just did a webinar on empaths, and it was wonderful. It was really good. I think it was the EMPA put it on, and you might be able to get a replay of it. It was really good. And I think if you go to her website, she's going to do a longer program and then a year-long program that you can participate in. So do some research on her, because she was wonderful.
There's a copy of her talk on the HTPA website.
It's really good. You should all listen to it. It's nice.
And if you don't want to pay for the course, she does have that book too.
Right.
Actually, she has more than one book.
That's wonderful. All right. If someone could type in the name of the person, the info of the book, that would be great. And then people can see that. Oh, okay. I remembered the 2 things I was going to say. One is Ativan. What's interesting is that for some people, like people who are who have Asperger's syndrome, it can actually have the opposite effect. Instead of calming, it can actually make make them more agitated. So you see, that's another thing to research. Again, what I'm seeing is the neurodiversity. That is something that needs to be explored further, and I believe that it will also cover sensitivity to the energy field if done right. Anyway, but the other thing I was going to say is about empathy, empaths. Now, again, finding the right word or name designation for the, say, sensitivity to the energy field is very important. And apparently now I have to look for a different word. But the thing is, like in this book, as well as in other places where I've heard people group together to cluster around the idea of being empaths. I mean, on one hand, I understand why they would want to do something like that, as it's a way to protect one another, right? So you have to kind of have this close-knit group and set yourself apart from others. But I just worry that that when we overemphasize the differences, that we might end up dividing people more than they need to be. See, we need to have the labels and the definitions, and I guess even divisions, in order to study the particular issues and whatever, in order to help people, and also in order to talk about it, because certain issues, traits, whatever, are unique to certain types of people, right? Whether it's their neurolingual programming, or whether it's their personality trait, or however you want to classify it. So we do need those labels, and we do need that separation, okay? Just like studying the systems of the body, we classify it into different systems in order to study, right? But we also must not lose the holistic view of it, in my opinion, because from what I have seen in my work, okay, is that there's really actually not a great division between sensitive and non-sensitive. That from what I have seen, and like I said, I've taught a required class, right, is that everybody's a sensitive. But the thing, it is part of being human. So it is a matter of whether they are in touch with it or not. And given the right, I guess, trainer, teacher, whatever, you can bring that out in anybody. So that's my opinion on that. And anyway, there you go. All right, someone else, please share your thoughts on the book.
Sharon, I saw you, I think, wanting to jump in there.
Go ahead, Sharon. Would you like to share your thoughts? So you'll have to
Yeah,
unmute. There you go.
so I didn't actually read the book. I listened to it because I had the opportunity to get it for free on Audible. So I don't recommend that because it's a lot to take in when you're trying to listen. And on a book, you can flip back and did I miss that? But you really don't want to do that when you're trying to get through it on Audible. So I found that harder to get through it this way. But I did pick up some things. And I guess my comment is, when I first started listening to it, I have a son who has Asperger's and a daughter who has social anxiety. And I thought, well, a lot of these traits or characteristics could cross over into those issues too. So I was trying to figure out, well, how is this different than what they say they have? And I almost feel like my daughter could probably qualify as being highly sensitive, even though she thinks it's just anxiety in social situations, but she needs to get away from all that and to feel better and just to regroup. So maybe I'll have her take that test. I couldn't take the test because I was listening, and didn't have it in front of me to go through it, but maybe I'll try and find that and have her go through that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sharon. Yes, please, recommend the book to your daughter and see how it might benefit her. And yes, Elizabeth, go ahead.
I had a chiropractor several years ago tell me that she thought I had a dominant sympathetic nervous system. And for those of you with a medical or nurse's background, how would you affiliate that with being the highly sensitive that's described in this book?
Anybody's got any thoughts on that?
Could you repeat that?
A chiropractor told me she thought I had a dominant sympathetic nervous system. She didn't tell me anything to do about it. She just thought I had it. And I was just wondering how that is possibly associated with being highly sensitive.
I think I can sort of touch on that. You said dominant sympathetic nervous system, so that would be related to the autonomic nervous system, which is the vagus nerve, and I can see how that would be, because if you're supposedly dominant sympathetic nervous system, that means you're kind of stuck in that fight or flight mode of the nervous system, autonomic nervous system. And actually that would correlate with, for example, the work by Christy Joy and Bonnie Thompson, the polyvagal healing through the vagus nerve class that they offer through Healing Touch. That might be something you want to explore. And it does a lot of people with PTSD. Okay, like you have shared that you have that. A lot of those issues can be addressed with an understanding of polyvagal theory and how the vagus nerve plays into the human system. And I
was in a head-on collision when I was either 14 or 15 that sort of rearranged my body. And I often wonder if this is not an inherited trait, but some kind of physical trauma that happened as a result of the accident, because I'm still in physical therapy for it.
Well, the thing is, the vagus nerve connects glands in the brain to it's the longest nerve in the body, so it connects at various parts of the body. Anyway, Angela, did you have something to say on this? Go ahead.
The sympathetic nervous system is usually when there is a lot of highly overcharged energy. All right. The parasympathetic nervous system is when everything starts calming down. All right. So that's basically it. So when there is too much energy, our body balance is usually off. And there could be something stuck. Again, it could be either from physical trauma, either a fall, an accident, something in that nature. It can also stem from a really a very traumatic emotional trauma. Okay, it could be either or, and sometimes we can be stuck in there, like you said, in fight and flight, and sometimes also in freeze mode. So we're like stuck. We're like, first we're like this, and then all of a sudden we're like that. And that's where we are stuck. And we can be stuck for sometimes decades, perhaps until we are learning, oh, there was a trauma way back then. And all of a sudden people are putting their puzzles back together. And it's like, okay, this happened when I was 7. This happened. And going back to what you said at the beginning, and I totally forgot your name, our moderator. I'm so sorry.
Me, Amelia.
Amelia. I'm so apologize. It's my first time. I'm my first time here, so I apologize.
No, it's okay.
But sometimes there can also be trauma during the mom's pregnancy that we are not even aware of. And the child can like literally absorb emotions from the mother because the mother has gone through a trauma. And then us being still in the womb, we can take those traumas on. Now, some children do and some children don't. It depends. I think so. Highly sensitivity can come in a lot of different forms. A lot of different forms. Like Amelia said, it could be either trauma, it could be sensitivity to medication, it would be sensitivity to the magnetic field. A lot of different things. And I think learning to figure out what helps us to, I'm trying to look for the word, to balance all of this, to diffuse all of this is the key. All right. Now, I want to say something else. Somebody was talking, I can't remember who said that, about this young man. Everybody thought he was really shy. I have studied, I'm also, I have a counseling, my license in counseling, and I learned all about the temperament theory, which is absolutely fabulous. There's all these different temperaments. The melancholy temperament, they're highly, they're like almost like, I want to call it genius prone. They're very, very smart. They're super intelligent. They're highly sensitive, though, to the energy around them. They can take people only in very small bites. By the end of the workday, they do not like to be bothered. They need to be by themselves. They need to recharge their energies. So I have an example. I have a client, and I didn't first know that she was a melancholy, but that's okay. I used to always hug her. I just love to hug people when she used to come to see me in person. And then one day we did a test. There's a test that you can take to see where you were at. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been hugging this woman like really hard every time when she comes. She's a melancholy. Melancholy people don't necessarily like to get too close to people. They always like to have some distance. They just don't like to be in anybody's energy field for too long or being too close. And then when I told her, I said, I am so sorry. And she was smiling and she says, well, I know I need some hugs once in a while. So it was very generous of her. Now, she was also sharing with me, amazing woman, very, very, a CEO somewhere in a big company. And she says, I love my child to pieces, but boy, when I get home, she's ready to hug me and she sits next to me and she wants me to put my arms around me and this and that. And she says, I love her, but I cannot do this. She says, I cannot. And I feel so bad about it. I literally need a half an hour where I'm away from everybody and everything. And nobody understands that in my house. So I don't know if I contributed anything to this lovely evening. I did not read the book. But I do know a lot about different sensitivities because of the work that I do. And I work with a lot of trauma clients.
Thank you. I do appreciate your insight. And I believe that what you've shared does contribute to the discussion. And by the way, what you're talking about in regards to, the parent that can't handle the hugs from the child. I've seen that a lot as well, because one of the things that I'm involved with is a homeschooling group. And there are, I have parents who have, again, it's a neurodiverse families. So say the mother is, is on the spectrum and the child is neurotypical, and the child, wants to be all over the mother, but the mother's like, and then I'm the opposite. I'm very neurotypical, but I'm the only neurotypical in my family. And I want to hug my preteen, well, she's not a preteen anymore. I want to hug my younger daughter, but she's like, no touching. So yeah, it's very difficult. But by understanding all these different, again, for me, I like to use the term neurodiversity. It helps. It helps us to bridge the gaps and understand one another better. And even though we do need the labels in order to discuss the differences, I still am very much in favor of a holistic approach where we can bridge the differences by, by knowledge, by understanding, by learning. But anyway, before we move on and give the floor to someone else, Elizabeth, I would encourage you to look into polyvagal theory and the class that I mentioned that is offered through Healing Touch, Healing Through the Vagus Nerve, because I think you will benefit from that, because it does talk about the different autonomic nervous system states. And actually, in the new research on polyvagal theory, there's actually 3 states. So anyway, just look into that. All right. Anybody else would like to talk about the book that we are discussing, which is The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron? Anybody else?
Could I just mention something really quickly for sharing?
Yeah.
And, everyone else, especially for future reference. The way I read this book is I found it online for free through the San Francisco Public Library. So you download the app, and I think they give you 2 weeks at a time, but you could always renew it. And it doesn't cost anything. It's so convenient because you don't have to go there. It's just that you're limited to only small sections at a time. But it was convenient.
Yeah, I actually tried to get it through my local library, but they didn't have it in stock. So tried.
All right. Anyone else who's read the book? Faye, Teresa, Sharon, Merman, anybody else who would like to share their thoughts on the book?
I just wanted to say that I downloaded the book to my Nook for $3. So now I can read and reread. I very much identified with the book. The research I thought was fascinating. But what you mentioned about the melancholy temperament, that explained a lot. My daughter and I we work around people all day, but when we get home, it's exactly like what you say. We need a half hour just to, and my husband's always respected that. And my daughter's husband does too, which is very nice. But it was funny when she was a kid and, I'd walk in and, kids would be all over me. And my husband would say, would you give your mother a minute to get in the door? And so the fact that my daughter needs this now, it's interesting. And she is a strong empath. I didn't even know what that meant until I started studying Healing Touch. And I find that it explains a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sharon. It's good to see you. Let's see, who else? Anybody else? I think Faye is gonna speak. Is that correct, Faye? Did you?
Yeah,
there we go. Okay.
It was interesting. I think it's just one of those foundational books like the one we read last month, 25 years old, but it really sets a boundary about what's evolved as the definition. On the preface self-test, I did 11. So if you answered 12 or more, you're HSP. Are you in or out? I rated 14. a moderate score would be 14. On the overcoming social discomfort, I was right 12 out of 17. If you were right on a dozen or more, you should have written your own book. So I thought it was just some of the parts that really spoke to me, or just for little reminders that popped out. You know, stay in bed for 9 hours with your eyes closed and let that be transcendent time if you can't speak. If you can't sleep. And the silent person gains more and more influence with time. That has been so true in my introverted life. And I love what she said on 181 and 182 about the spiritual approaches in the HSP, and the spiritual dangers of transference and thinking, avoiding others, and sacrificing the self. I like that. And how she went into the existential crisis and how you can really come through on that. You're talking about the Holocaust people. And then I got into a little bit just thinking about antidepressants and what's going on since the book was written. So more than 20 million antidepressants were prescribed between October and December 2020. And that's with a 6% increase compared to the 3 months in 2019. And then antidepressants fills for children and those under 25 years of age, nearly 50% increase from 2019 to 2020. That's just really, really huge. And then I've been reading our book for next month, and it is just amazing how she talks about the placebo effect and the effect on antidepressants. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, right now, that's the whole reason why I have my mission in life, which is to improve mental health awareness and care through knowledge and application of energy medicine. So energy medicine not only involves healing touch work, for example, but also things like essential oils, which is also part of natural medicine. And because I have seen the dramatic effects of having started to incorporate essential oils in my work, I am now very curious to know how it can help with I guess addressing depression, severe depression, and such as that. And the thing is that I think a combination of energy healing, energy therapies, and acupuncture, I highly recommend that, and essential oils. I think that it might unlock some things for me. And I will, when I have gathered enough data, I will share, what I've discovered. But yes, go ahead, Angela. What would you like to say?
Actually, I do energy work, and I'm also a certified aromatherapist. And it was when you said essential oils, I'm like, oh. So I create my own essential oil blends. I make custom-made blends all around emotional well-being. And I actually made one I call it chill out. For some people that are very angry and frustrated and they're stuck of just being angry at the world. And it is amazing. Inhalers are truly, I think inhalers are my favorite aromatherapy modality because they quickly go they are quickly absorbed into our system. And they're so quick to shift the energy within a person, and then it changes the outer person. And I'm going to give you an example. It was quite a few years ago. I went to this organic supermarket, and the lady that was standing at the cash register, she had a really, like, you could look at her, you could see that she was depressed. She was really sad and downtrodden. You could just look at her and you knew something was wrong. And I had asked her, I said, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Oh, I just have a lot of stuff going on." And so, and so I'm taking out one of my essential oil blends, and there was a lot of the citrus oils in there. A lot of the citrus oils, they are very uplifting, they are lighthearted, especially the lime oil. That was always my favorite. It's very uplifting. And I held it under her nose. I said, "Would you like to try it?" And she said, yes. She smelled it for maybe 15 seconds, and immediately, and when I say immediately, I mean right away, she had a smile on her face. You could even watch her starting to get some color in her face. Now, I'm not talking like she went from white to red. You could almost see that there was a little bit more of a rosier complexion. It's almost like she started to take a really deep breath, like she was almost holding her breath from being so upset and being tight and full of tension. All of a sudden, this like letting go of whatever was going on. Did the problems go away? No, but she was able to take a really deep breath, get some oxygen into her bloodstream, and to let some of the tension go. It was amazing.
Yep, I hear you. Thanks for sharing.
Share that.
Yes. Well, it's important to talk about the other ways that we can, attempt to address, mental health issues. Is there anybody else here who would like to share about the book? Because we have gone over the hour. So if you want to talk about the book, now is the chance. I'll let you. No? Okay, well, in that case, I think that we've covered a lot of ground with today's discussion. And I truly appreciate everyone's thoughts on this, and for listening to my insight as well, because I know that's a little bit an unusual take on things as I usually have. So for next book club, Diane, could you unmute yourself and just talk about the next one?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So we chose the new book by Dr. Shamani Jan. And I think it was Faye's already started reading. I've already started reading. And Healing Ourselves, Biofield Science, and the Future of Health. So she's done an amazing job, of course, at marketing, and there's all kinds of interviews out there. And we're going to be discussing the book at our next meeting in March. Hang on. Let's check the calendar here. So that's going to be March the 7th at 7 Central Time. And then for April the 4th, so I'm going to co-host the April, or host the April meeting. And then in May, we are going to have Shamani Jan come for for an interview. And Amelia's gonna host that.
Actually, hang on, Diane. I think you got the dates like a month ahead. I think the one in March, that would be the book by Shamini Jain, and you're hosting that. Yeah. So, and then April is when we interview her, which I will do.
Correct.
And then
Yes.
May, you're doing the lead hosting for the book in May, correct?
Oh, okay. Did I get the months mixed up?
No, I think you kind of put it like a month ahead.
Oh, okay,
Anyway,
yeah.
but the thing is, just see
next
the
month we're discussing the book. We'll have an
Yes.
opportunity to do that, and then the following month
yes.
we're going to have a chance to interview her and have
Mhm.
time for Q&A.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's what's in store for us. And what else can I say? I'm just very pleased with the turnout, and I hope you all had a great time listening to the discussion and contributing to it. And feel free to continue the discussion in the Facebook group for the virtual book club, because I know that there are some people who would appreciate that because they can't attend live, and they want to have discussion. And so anyway, and don't forget that this recording will be uploaded onto the page dedicated to our virtual book club on the HTPA website. And just make sure you keep your membership current so that you can have access to these recordings and continue to be part of the club. And thank you very much for being here and for
Amelia and
supporting.
Diane, thank you very much for hosting and emceeing.
Yes, thank
You're
you all.
welcome.
All
Thank
right,
you all.
take care. Bye.